Wow. So what's the difference between military and assassin training? That was another question. You answered it a little bit with this answer. Could you go a little bit deeper into that?
Assassin training is invisible warfare, as opposed to military training is like overt warfare. You put on a uniform, you're supposed to operate under the codes of military justice. You're supposed to operate under Geneva Conventions. There's all these parameters. There's this order following things. Whereas assassin training was a form of autonomy. That was what appealed to me so much. So I wanted freedom, and this was supposedly the way that I got freedom was hunting people, and that was the only way I was ever let out and led out to be exemplary. Otherwise, I was kept confined continually, and so assassin training was multidisciplinary. So in the United States military, they have what's called your MOS, which is like your job. That's your function. You're going to get trained up through your advanced training school. You're only going to have basically that job. Everybody goes through a basic combat training, and then to be a soldier, a soldier overall. However, it's then broken down into specializations. The United States military, the Army, has 11 Bravos. These are infantrymen. Okay, that's their job. They can then branch into different jobs later on, but generally they're going to stay in that role. You have people that are artillerymen. You have people that are supply specialists. You have people that are chefs. You have people that's like literally their world operates around that function. When you deal with assassin training, what you're dealing with so much more is the ability to be invisible, to be a criminal for all intents and purposes, how to live a life of being background noise, how to blend in and be a chameleon in all your environments, how to learn how to use the art of social engineering to work your way into a group, to be able to infiltrate and get past people's defenses psychologically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, to be able to get in with them, to be able to get them to let their guards down so you can deliver a killing blow, plant evidence, extract people. You're made to be a ghost. And that's fundamentally very different than what the United States military has, this kind of public hoorah, hoorah kind of feeling, camaraderie, brothership. Whereas in the assassin training, you're never allowed to bond with anybody because anybody could become your next target. You may be literally best friends with the guy that you've been hanging out with for the last 2 years, and you get a text message that tells you that this is your next target, and you shoot him in the head, right? And you walk out of the room. Like this is kind of how these functions operate. You can't ever have these bonds and these attachments. And this is why Russ Dizdar wrote this book on the Black Awakening. It's understanding there's a different kind of thing that takes place with these back personalities, with these subsets of identities that are made to be capable of doing multidisciplinary work, whether that's running a vehicle, whether that's running an aircraft, whether that's dealing with digital closets and communications. You have to be able to handle all of these different things that come your way. Whereas in the military, it's very compartmentalized towards a single area.
What types of things are specialized in the assassin training? Is that more, say, for example, are there certain people that are in these programs that specialize in specific weapon types or specific types of martial arts or combat training? Or is it more just everybody does everything and you become skilled in a plethora of different things?
No, because some people are just going to get assassin training so they can go out and do that as one of the things they do. Otherwise, maybe their main function for a group is being a mule, being a prostitute. But it doesn't take a lot to teach somebody how to kill somebody. It's 4 pounds of pressure to puncture the human skin. It's not a lot, right? So it's more so teaching people how to be able to dispose of the resistance to killing. That's the fundamental basis of all of it. You have to get people who are capable of not having that hesitancy. You can kill any fundamentals to it is you can kill anybody if you're absolutely willing to die. If you're absolutely committed to death as an inevitability, you can kill anybody. I don't care how protected they are. There's no one on the face of the earth that can hide from somebody who's wholly committed to giving their life up in the act of going after them and pursuing them. There's no amount of protective agents that you can deploy around you. You can get to anybody no matter where they are fundamentally. It's just a matter of time, resources, and intelligent strategies. This is all it takes. People have talents in certain areas that make them more apt towards weapon systems like you're talking about. There's definitely guys, like I had somebody who I met a year ago at Passover who was a force recon Marine. He was a sniper. That was his deal. He loved looking through optics and killing people through that. He used all kinds of other tools at times. However, that was his platform. He lived around that platform. He decimated people all over this world under force recon, publicly. Privately, he was a force of deafening destruction to people that came around him. Those guys operate on a totally different thing. I'm not the guy with the greatest shot. They have a totally different thing. I like being up close and personal, which meant I had this pronation towards edged weapons. Edged weapons was everything to me. I thought that was the best way. I thought my teeth were the most effective tool that I could use to rip out someone's throat. I personally gravitated towards that form of killing. Other people have a resistance to that they can't broach, they can't get past, and they're going to be used to do things, to inject things, to smear rags over people's faces, to knock them out, anesthetize them, and drag them out of there, and then kill them in other kinds of means to make them look like they died with a hooker on them, all this other stuff. Everybody has a little different aptitudes, and so it's catered towards that. This is why a handler is not, it's not some kind of a guy waving hypnotic rings around all the time. It's somebody that is bonded to the person, that knows the person, that is befriended the person, and understand what drives them, because fundamentally people's self-will is the most powerful tool that you can have to get them willing to engage in this stuff. So smaller, shorter statured people are capable of infiltrating in a different way than a big, fit, muscular looking guy. And this is why women and children are utilized as assassins for a lot longer in the teams, because it allows them the ability to be disarming. People are a lot less scared of a little child that's playing around and poking them with stuff than they are with a big, scary buff guy who's walking around and poking them with stuff.
That makes sense. Thank you so much for answering that. The next question, what is it like to hunt humans? What would a typical assignment look like from start to finish? And can you give any examples?
It's it's the greatest hunt there is. I mean, especially if they know. It's not a, if you have like a real hard target, somebody that's fortified themselves. You have people that know you're coming. There's 3 levels to it. It's like they have absolutely no idea that anything's coming their way, or they have some kind of idea that there could be a threat out there. And then there's somebody who absolutely knows people are coming for them. Those are like the scales of what it is, that about, this is what it takes to know how to go about your plan, because it's fundamentally different. I've never hunted animals. I hunt fish underwater. I like to spear fish underwater. Otherwise, I don't hunt animals. I've tried. I've gone out there with people that like to shoot animals and stuff. I just, it's, there's nothing that compares to it. There's just not. There's no greater adrenaline rush on the face of the earth. And I know this is super perverse, but whatever. Screw off. It's like I'm freaking trying to hunt people down that literally rape children. Like I've watched these guys, some of these guys, I literally watched rape children in high definition. Not some kind of like, oh yeah, live. Watch them do it live. Rape children. Okay. Then literally I got a green light to go after them. Frick yeah, man. All day and night. There's no greater exciting thing on the face of the earth than to go after somebody else that has the ability to fight back mentally, emotionally, spiritually, who has their own way to wage their own war. There's nothing more thrilling on the face of the earth, because you get an opportunity to dismantle a demon, like a shadow walker. Like you get to go for the throat of this beast system, and you finally get your hands on them. You finally get the ability to be vengeance incarnate on them. You get the ability to tear out their throat and spit in their face and defecate on them and make them know what it feels like to be powerless for a moment. Like there's no amount of it that's enough. I'll tell you, it's a stinking bad drug. It's a bad drug. You get hooked on it super bad. Super bad. Not everybody does. Some people are like, I'm not really that into it afterwards. They get into their first kill and some of them break and they never come out of it, Emma. Like they never recover. They go through that thing and they're out forever. They cannot recover from it mentally. Others get in there and they're like, that's the greatest relief I've ever had in my life. It was great. It was freedom to me, not for me, but for the victims. I fundamentally understood that every one of these people I snuffed out was an opportunity for one child, maybe thousands. Maybe this individual had thousands and thousands of victims. I don't know. But I am absolutely certain that every single time I went after a true predator, like a true predator, like they had a history of so many skeletons in their closets and so many people that covered it up around them. These are the secondary people that I like to go after, was the people that covered it up. And eventually I stopped wanting to just go after the abusers, and I started wanting to go after the perpetrators of the conspiracy of silence, because I learned very quickly that the only reason these guys keep popping up everywhere, because I would find priests, right? I would find priests that were in these parishes of these Catholic churches who were supposed to be my point of contact, a guy who was supposed to give me orders, right? And these were the people who families members would come to in their closets and tell them, this man has been raping my son who's 5 years old. And they would know this, and they would, instead of getting rid of the guy and turning him over and having him be devoured, they would move him away from that family and they would move him into another one. And I saw this happen in the Catholic Church. I saw this happen in the Christian church. I saw this happen in the corporate controlled media. I saw this happen in every little echelon of everywhere I went in this filthy, disgusting society that we live in, where people are walking around like, oh, it's a beautiful day out, isn't it, Jim? You betcha. I'm like, screw you guys. They're freaking destroying the lives of the innocent every freaking day of your life. And you all sit around like it's some kind of funny thing. Ha ha. It's in movies. Let's go watch the next movie and just ha ha laugh about it and be entertained by it. And I'm like, you guys could be fighting a war and eradicating this evil. Like, there was no greater relief in my life than when I finally got to stalk them. Like, I finally got to put on darkness as a garment and go after them and conceal myself in their closets and underneath their bed like the monsters that they would do. They play these sycophantic games of traumatizing the child before they do the act. Like, it's just so freaking disgusting how often they try to get this rise out of them. They sexually are stimulated off of dread and fear of children. Like, they are so evil, like actually possessed by evil, that the only way they find sexual pleasure is from the traumatization of children. Like, this is such an unutterable darkness that these people, it's a joy to play mind games on them and to make them feel dread, like fear that grips them in the depths of their being, that rips out their spinal column and shows it to their face before they die. Like, that level of systemic torture, when you're using a little come along to ratchet out their spine in front of them and listening as their spine is crunching and breaking under the tension, and watching their face and documenting this so that every other pervert someday has an opportunity to understand this is what happens when you participate in satisfying your lust. Like, I believed I would document a lot of this stuff and film it because I believed that there was going to come this day where this would get released, where what would actually get out was not all the kiddie porn sycophantic and the pedophiles would be like, we're going to welcome them into society. You guys got to give us rights just like everybody else. I thought the day would come when they would play this type of film and it would put the fear of God back into them. People used to have dread because there used to be something called public executions. And you know what you do? It's a very valuable tool to a society when you publicly execute people in horrifically barbaric ways so that they understand this is the consequences for engaging in such sycophantic, disgusting behavior. You want to participate in here? Not in our kingdom. Get the heck out of here. Like, they used to drive away these oath-keeping societies. The Bavarian Illuminati, the reason they eradicated them from their country was because these guys would go engage in this level of darkness and then infiltrate academics and societies of, they would infiltrate the religious order. They would infiltrate the military. They would infiltrate the political order. And they would go in and start to change the agenda to facilitate their other brothers being able to come in and engage in this type of depravity openly. And so societies as a whole would learn about this and they would rise up and drive this out of there. And then they would bring these guys out to the streets, cut off their balls in front of everyone and choke them to death with it. They would stack tires, like down in Mexico, the way they dealt with it, they'd stack them in a ring of tires and they'd light them on fire. It gets rid of all the DNA evidence. It's an incredibly effective tool. Like, this is how people have dealt with this. They call them vigilantes, whatever the heck you want to call them, hands of God. Like, every time people are like, vengeance is mine, says Yahuwah. What the heck do you think he does? He raises up adversaries to deliver vengeance. And he does it mostly through the hands of men and women, like Jael, who drove a tent peg through the skull of Sisera and his army in her house. She's all like, come on into my tent. Come on in, have a nice little relaxing snack. Come on, I'll give you some cheese and some curds and milk. And he lays him down to sleep and she picks up a tent peg and a hammer and drives it through his skull. That's a righteous woman. That's the type of women that we need. People that are protectors of their home instead of perverters of justice, who turn the blind eye to Uncle Jerry, who keeps raping their children back at night. And they don't talk about it. They don't tell anyone because they're so learned helplessness. No, they absolutely and utterly put a death note to it. And they don't allow it to happen one more time. We're supposed to have that level of protective instinct in us. And every one of you who's watching this who doesn't have that, it's because somebody chemically castrated you and raped you of your identity as a warrior to fight back against this stuff. This is what they should be doing with the United States military. And instead, they're out there waging war on all these other countries. You're like, what the heck? You're killing millions of civilians over here. Meanwhile, we have tens of millions of people being tortured and tormented and depraved of any level of happiness and the life, joy, and pursuit of any kind of happiness. We have so much depravity and destruction of the soul here, and we need those guys hunting and killing here, not just the people that they send you out on missions. And they built this system out so in the military they're all like scared because they're like, I'm going to get arrested, I'm going to get right, man. They've got all these secrecy oaths and all this other filthy worthlessness to keep all this stuff secret, that the United States government executes its own citizens and citizens of others in order to advance a totally evil agenda. Like the God of the United States military that all these soldiers are swearing to is the God of fortune and luck. Like you can look up his name. It's the same gods of old. It's the same plumed serpent. You literally are swearing an oath to the death dealer himself. And you have to renounce those oaths fundamentally, because hunting humans is what soldiers were made to do. The military has embraced this doctrine, but it's under the ground. It's under these special kill teams. It's under the directives of the Central Intelligence Agency, which operates under the State Department, so that they can operate as a diplomat or an ambassador, so that the way they're not breaking their charters. It's all these filthy semantics and rules. It's just a bunch of worthlessness to not just go let the wolves go do what they were best at, which was tearing the throats out of monsters at night. And instead, they're all compartmentalized and locked up through these fractured mind control handlers programs, like all of these security and transport agencies, all these different groups that just run around and cover up this underworld because they don't want to let the dogs off the leash, because they know they would eat their handlers instantly. And that's what y'all need to do. Fundamentally, you got to devour those people. And now I personally have surrendered my sword to the Father and said, hey, for now, I'm going to give that to you. If you ever want me to pick it up again, you'll make that fundamentally clear. But until then, the sword that I'm choosing as an act of my will today to wield is a different one. I found out that these swords are incredibly effective at our message. And this one is one that I had to go learn how to fight. How does he fight? I'd like literally study the Bible as my war manual. I'm like, how does he fight? Because I believe that's literally the source of truth for me in my life. Everybody's got their own understanding of it. However, for me, that was the foundations of truth that I've helped to rebuild my life and find me freedom and restoration and healing. Because you know what? There's a lot of us who go out, and what we did in our youth was just slaughter and butcher continually. And it makes us very unrelatable to the rest of society. We're really these pariahs that they don't like us. We're really make people uncomfortable. And you're like, my daughter wanted to introduce me to somebody and was like handing them one of my bookmarks to my YouTube page. And I was all like, I had just released our video last time, which was like ex-child assassin, whatever was on my YouTube page. And these are people I'm going to probably be living next to for a while. And I was like, yep, this is like it, you know? And I'm all like, oh, hey, but real quick, I did say something last time that I wanted Chelsea help me remember. Hold on one second. I got to grab a tool. I finally found a purpose I found a job that helped me get out of the mental trap of feeling like I have no service to offer society. You're right. You're like, people don't like killers. You know, it's all frowned upon these days. It's lame. Anyways, it'll change in a hurry, y'all. It'll change in a right quick hurry, and people are going to have to get their heads on straight about it and learn how to handle that in a quickie. But okay, I'll show you this. This is covered in blood. Don't worry about it. It's animal blood, I promise. These are because I butchered a bunch of sheep for one of my friends who's got a homestead and was like, we want to put some meat in the freezer. Will you come help us butcher some sheep? So they bought some sheep from somebody else. They're like, they got some pasture raised sheep. They're all pretty happy sheep, you know? And so we went out into his field and helped catch these sheep and wrangle the sheep. I became a shepherd down in North Carolina and then in Texas as a farm manager. And we began to wrangle all these St. Croix sheep. Greg Judy, the greatest ranching farmer, pioneer of grass-fed rotational graze. Anyways, check it out. But I became an artisanal butcher. Somebody paid me to go fly up to a class up in Washington by this guy named Brandon. He is farmsteadmeatsmith.com. Maybe you can pull up his website. I don't know. But anyways, this is like the only post I have on my YouTube community page where I posted something about like being really pumped up and fired up. It's one of the few times I wrote.
What's the website? I'll look for it while you're talking.
Farmstead Meatsmith. I think that's it. Anyways, it's going to have a guy who's like smiling with a giant, beautiful rack of meat, you know? But these tools help me find an identity and a purpose for like killing, because like it's fundamentally something you got to exercise on occasion. And I know that's super creepy. It makes people uncomfortable, whatever. I like using sharp edge tools to do work. And I love sharpening stuff. Super scary, incredibly sharp, razor sharp. I'll be posting a video of this sharpening system that I utilize. Anyways, I took that class and this guy, Brandon, was teaching people how to use knives, like high carbon steel, predominantly knives, to butcher animals and use every part of the animal. And so that the animal died in the most humane way possible under the least amount of stress so that none of those filthy other compounds got released into the blood like cortisol and all this other stuff. And then how to butcher the animal entirely. And for me, that was a huge outlet of like, wow, I've got a purpose for this blade that's locked up inside me all my life. Like, I can add value to my neighbors. Like, I can add value to society that doesn't involve just killing people, because I'm like, I don't want to kill people anymore. I choose as an act of my will not to go kill people anymore. You know, I surrender that. But helping people dispatch their animals because they're fundamentally too cowardly to kill their own animals. And that's a real reality. Like, don't get a stupid farm animal until you know how to kill it and you're willing to do it yourself. I think it's the weakest thing I've ever seen in society. People are like, I'm going to raise these chickens, but somebody else come and do the killing for me because I don't want to see it. I'm like, stop it. You want to eat meat, kill it yourself, butcher it yourself. You know how it died. You know how it died. It didn't die in this trauma state like every other mainstream version of meat processing and facilitating does. Kill it yourself, raise it yourself, and you have this totally different meal of satisfaction. And then you get to take care of how it's fed. But anyways, artisanal butchering has transformed my life and given me the opportunity to add value to my neighbors and giving me all kinds of connections. Like, I've actually had more work from doing this than I ever did with other versions of farming. I did land consulting and farm consulting, helping people build out their properties and like bioregenerative agriculture and all this other stuff. This is fundamentally what most people need the most help with, because they're basically dumb. They're like, I don't know. This is my favorite Dexter 5-inch skinning knife. This is one of the best ones. Go buy old knives. They're better. Most of them. This one, Dexter's are great. This one rocks. The rest of these I don't recommend. That one's great. But otherwise, I just use almost entirely this neck knife made by MT Knives, Genesis neck knife. I use this for butchering the entire animal. I love this knife. It's fantastic. It's terrifyingly sharp and fundamentally wonderful. Anyways, that's how I found some help hunting humans. Because you know what, I still hunt them every single day of my life. I just try to hunt their souls. I want them to become double agents. I literally want them to come out of the kingdom of cowards, and I want them to become kingdom of courageous. It's just so much better out here. We could use you on our team, y'all. Come fight for the freedom of the people that are in tortured cells. You know what I'm saying? You can learn a different way of fighting, and it's way more effective. So we need you on this team.
When I interviewed John Wedger, who you know, he
Yeah.
said something that a couple years ago that really stuck with me, where he was like, you know, I'm not gonna kill these people. I'm not gonna eradicate them, and I'm gonna be a mosquito in the room that's buzzing 24 hours a day. Like, they're always gonna know, they're always gonna hear me and know that I'm there, even if I can't do everything that I want to do. Like, I'm gonna be that mosquito biting at them and buzzing in their ear. And I was like, I love that. That's a good way to, you know, say what you are, where you're fighting in a different way now, not necessarily with violence with people, but like, you're gonna pester the hell out of them. They're gonna know that you're, you know, that you're right on their trail. And you're right, we do need everybody to step up that's listening.
Recruit.
um
Never stop
yeah,
recruiting. That's the fundamentals, you know? Recruit from within.
100%. And I want to go a little bit deeper into that question that we just asked. So talk about when you are called on a mission, when you're in these systems, how does that work? Is that something that you're told and then you're given directions and then sent on your way? Or how does that work, sort of from a perspective of maybe an experience that you have, or what does that look like from that start to finish when you're actually on, you know, boots on the ground, going on a mission, and you're set to kill one person or many people? And maybe you could allude to that too. Like, as a mission, are you killing multiple people? Is this one person? Maybe it's different every time. Like, how does this look when they're sending you out on this?
Or you generally get a briefing first and foremost. You're going to get, like, we just used to have folders, basic folders that would have a dossier on your target. So it would have, I grew up analog, y'all. I know this is a little different probably now, but I grew up mostly analog. Paper trails are not a real thing you want to have anywhere around. So you would have the most basic bare bones amount of information that was on a target that was necessary and pertinent for you to be able to build up a game plan on them. You would generally, for me, the triggers that I needed was evidence. Like, I needed to see evidence, physical, as physical evidence as could be, to show that this person was indeed and actively engaging in pedophilia or in ritualistic abuse of children, or was covering up those crimes. So that was something that would be produced for me as like an incentive, like something I had to have to go after targets. You'd have somebody who would bring you that dossier, and a lot of times this is done through a courier system. You have dead drops where you are like, you'll get activated to go out, sometimes through a phone call, generally through somebody reaching out to you to bring on this side of you. They're going to turn on the other side. For me, like, I went by a name called Killough, Killough. That was in the United States military. In 2008, when I went to my advanced training in Virginia, I got there weeks early so that I could participate in joining with this special kill teams that was operating out of Virginia, and specifically centered around Alexandria, Virginia. They had a courier system that would bring orders in from somebody else who would drop them. You would go out, receive those. When you took those orders in, you would look over your target. You would get an idea of what level of awareness they had first and foremost, and then how what was the way they wanted the target eliminated, how they wanted it to look. Did they want it to be an open face killing? They would call it like to send a message to the masses. If that was accompanying it, what they wanted was a very overt way of a violent death. They wanted it to look like somebody murdered them in a very horrific and publicized way. So that would be a message to the masses. Otherwise, if they wanted it completely invisible, they wanted you to make that person disappear. So that's where you're deploying something like where you're sinking them. You're getting rid of their body in acid. You're getting it fed to pigs. You're making sure that they're disposed of in a way that's completely invisible to the outer system of a paramedic showing up and checking the body and getting a pulse and then going to a corner. You're making sure that none of that takes place. Sometimes they want it to look like died of natural causes. So when I got a mission, one of the missions that I went on in oh gosh, one of them was to go and eliminate one target who was in an apartment in New York City. This target had a girlfriend that was in the apartment at the time. And so part of the loose ends is whether or not a witness, if there is a witness involved, you have to find out what are the rules of engagement, whether or not that person can be killed, whether that person can be dragged and bagged, meaning that they're going to go into prison, they're going to disappear, but that's not going to be my job. They're going to be extracted. And it's like the gulag of our society. It sucks, y'all. There's this other layer of it where sometimes people walk in as this is happening and they just get disappeared. And it's awful. That's part of it. Anyways, this guy was part of a defense contractor, and he had information that somebody believed would compromise a politician. So they wanted him killed. And they made it look like, for me, that this guy had been compromising politicians through selling them sex through children. That was what was in his dossier. I went after him in his apartment. His girlfriend was there. I went after him in a moment of opportunity. So he needed to be killed very violently and publicly. So I tore out his throat. His girlfriend witnessed this act and was made to see it and live. So it was something to cause trauma and fear and have her go running and screaming out in and yelling to everyone what happened and create a big hype about it. It was as I was extracting out of there that I puked in a trash can, and I saw this man, like a homeless man, sitting there. And it's like you never want your face seen. I can't even explain how bad this is. You never want to be seen like that, like like a monster. You don't want anybody to see you like that because you're you, but in a way that's so uncanny. And they want you, like, you're not allowed to be seen like that. I can't even explain it beyond that. You don't want anybody to know you as a beast. As justifiable as what I did was legally, ethically, it's still a way of killing that is so unnatural to people. For somebody to tear out their enemy's throat with their mouth, with their teeth, is not normal. It's not something they're like it's some kind of vampire movie thing, but it's a very effective way of killing somebody when you have no other weapons in your hand. And I saw this guy there, and he looked at me as I'm puking, and I'm puking up blood, and I'm puking up skin. And he's like, it's going to get better. I have no idea why he said that to me or what. I think he knew me. Like not the guy I was. I think he knew that level of darkness, that level of brokenness, that level of violence. This is why I have such a love for the homeless, like why I have such a love for people that are overlooked and discarded in the shadows, because that guy looked at me in that level of raw violence, and he had compassion on me. He didn't have hatred, and he didn't have fear. Like, I didn't want people to be scared of me for who I was, but I understood I was scary. And that was really hard because I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be understood, and I wanted to be needed. And he planted this seed of love, like of love, raw love, right in the middle of that moment. And like when I went back to base, you get a debriefing after you're done, and you go over, um, you go over the series of events and what it took place. Like what I operated under was called special access projects. And you have like a security officer who's a project security officer who's over you. This is the person you actually do the reporting to. They go over the debrief with you. They show you what's on the public side of it. And then you tell them what happened behind the scenes side of it. And then they work with the media arm, if it's a message to the masses, to sway the conversation and the story to fit a narrative for how they want that information getting out. This is why there's such an intimate connection between the media and the military and the corporations, so that they can swing these stories to fit in accordance with the what they're wanting people to know took place. That level of it is where in the debrief that they generally try to eradicate this kind of any level of emotionality that got put in there. They try to get rid of that so that you just go back to being the cold stone operator, just clear and level headed. And so it was like I had to compartmentalize and bury off anytime I ever had like an emotional response during a mission. Anytime I had like a level of humanity, like that had to get shut back down. Like there was this one instance when I was young, and they sent me after this couple, like a husband and wife in Pine Top, Arizona, and I was walking through the forest. It was like a super simple like DNC, like you kill them and then you get rid of them. And like I was walking through this forest, and like I would have this like I was possessed. Like there's no other way to say it. I'm totally possessed by this other spirit that would help me to like be quiet, be silent. And like I was walking through this forest to go in towards this house, and their lights were on and I could see them. And I hate that feeling, like, because I used to watch people from outside their homes picking my moment, like picking, like to choose when you're going to kill somebody is a serious thing. And people that have their lights on in their houses, it always just blew me away that they would have their lights on in dark, like dark outside, light inside, just because you'd sit there and just watch them for hours all night long. And you're waiting for them to get into a position where you could absolutely sneak in and do the killing. And I was starting to try to broach this area around their house, and I literally felt like I hit a wall. Like it wasn't a physical wall. It had nothing to do with like any type of guard. It was like I felt like a spiritual like void, that as I pressed through that, I felt like this force of darkness leave me. Like all of the shadim, all of the demons that were there that would empower me were gone. Like that if I went in there, I was just me. It was just me, and it was just my hand. And I felt like it was one of those times I felt like I walked through a wall of fire, like an actual protective hedge of protection. Like I actually felt like I hit that, and it scared me. I was like through this, and I couldn't go in my own power. And I felt so much fear. I felt so much terror. I felt so much like need to run away. And it was one of those times where I literally ran. I ran for my life. Like I'd never been more scared in my life. And I believed what I went through was the protective power of the Most High. Like truly, like somebody whose life was in alignment with the Father's ways, and they were being protected. They actually had a hedge of protection around them that I couldn't pass through. I couldn't get through. And this is why I fundamentally believe it is a spiritual war, that even if they send people who are trained to kill and that are what you would think these bloodthirsty monsters, they still have a legal rules of engagement that they can't supersede unless the spiritual forces behind them facilitate that. And this is why I appeal to the Most High authority in the spiritual realm, the Creator, El Elyon, like Yahuwah Elohim Sevos. I knew him as the Lord God Almighty, like through the working of his Son, Jesus Christ, Yeshua Messiah. Like he showed me a way out. He showed me a way of getting deliverance, of freedom that was not encumbered by somebody else's ulterior motives. Like he showed me freedom to choose, which was totally different than all of these other systems. Because I'd get those printout sheets, and I'd get these folders of these people, and somebody else decided everything for me. Like they didn't just let me go be what I am and do what I do. Like they didn't let me off the leash to hunt. They still like to have their sticky fingers and ulterior agendas. And I hated that. I just wanted freedom to hunt as I had been raised to do, as I was born to do. And they just would not give that to me.